I want to call this is the organizational meeting, January 12th, 4:30. We'll have a roll call for the organizational meeting.
Mr. Cottrell is absent. Mrs. Grandison,
Here.
Mrs. Host,
Here.
Mr. Miles,
Here.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Here. We stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to start out with nominations for president for the Claymont City School Board for the following year.
I nominate Lois Grandison for the president for the 2023 year.
A second.
We're gonna roll call. No, wait.
I need a roll call,
Roll call, then I have to close.
and then we'll, yes.
Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Abstain.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Yes. Okay, then
Motion second.
I need a motion to,
Make
first
a
and a
motion.
second to close out
I
the,
make a motion to close nominations.
Second.
roll call.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Abstain.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Yes. Okay, now I need a motion for vice president.
No, you
No,
don't.
I'm gonna make a motion to
Where
appoint
we at?
you.
No, I
You're
need
down
to,
here.
okay,
I make a motion to appoint Lois as the
yes,
president.
okay. We need to, let's make another motion?
Yeah.
Steve,
Yes.
Jeez.
Second,
Second, I think, was Steve,
Steve, okay.
so we'll nominate Lois.
Now when you do roll call again,
Mrs. Host,
Yep.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
abstain.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
Yes.
Then you do it.
I, and state your name,
I, Lois Grandison,
do hereby swear
do hereby swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the
of
Constitution
the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of
of
the State of Ohio,
the State of Ohio,
and that I will,
that I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform and discharge
my
my duties
duties
as President
as President
of the Board of Education
of the Board of Education
of the Claymont City School District.
of the Claymont City School District.
Good job, Lois.
Okay, now, okay, now we'll have nominations for the Vice President.
I
The Claymont
nominate
City.
Michelle Wolf.
Technically, you need to open up roll call or open up to open nominations for, and then once they're open, then you can nominate.
Oh, I thought she just did open it.
Okay, okay, I want to open the nominations for Vice President of the Claymont City School Board.
I nominate Michelle Wolf.
I nominate Cindy Host.
I decline your nomination.
Okay. So I'll second Michelle Wolf. Roll call?
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Abstain. Okay. I need a motion to close out the nominations for Vice President of the School Board.
I make a motion to close out the nominations.
A second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Abstain. Okay, I need a motion to appoint Michelle Wolf as Vice President of the School Board.
I make a motion to appoint Michelle Wolf as vice president of the school board.
A second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Abstain.
I state your name. I, Michelle Wolf, do hereby swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that I will, to the best of my ability, faithfully perform and discharge my duties as Vice President of the Board of Education of the Claymont City School District. Thank you.
Me too.
Okay, the board organizational items, I need a motion. No,
Yeah.
yes, I need a motion to approve the following organizational items, and Mr. Rich will go over those.
I'll go through those items. As far as first item A is establishing our regular meetings, and that should be for 2023 to be held at the administrative office, and I left that blank for discussion. I have some dates listed, and I already know there's one conflict on June 26th. So if we want to take a look at that date for June 26th, and the purpose of that special meeting was to close out our books for the fiscal year, and also potentially if we have any hirings or people who are leaving our district for another district, we can do that and help expedite the summer process. But mainly it's for financials.
Is it just that date somebody had a issue or
I won't be here.
the whole week?
Oh, no, just that day.
Okay, because if we could move it to like Wednesday or Thursday, that would actually be, I mean, help me just because of the, making sure everything's,
The 29th,
if that,
that's a Thursday.
if that would be okay with other people.
I'm okay with the 29th. How about you?
Mm-hmm.
That's June, right?
Yep.
29th, yeah.
Okay, any other issues with the other dates? November, that date is on has moved. That will be the week of Thanksgiving, as it was this year, in case any of you are thinking about going to the Ohio School Board Conference. Board committees, the discussion with Mrs. Grandison. There are a little bit tweaking to some of the committees this year compared to last, but pretty much most of them stayed the same. There would be item C for the treasurer to pay bills, permanent appropriations, treasurer to be a signatory for payroll and warrant checks, just to have a board service fund of $5,000, treasurer to request advances from the county auditor as necessary, treasurer to invest interim funds, interest among funds shall be distributed according to revised code 4222. Authorizes the superintendent to employ teaching and non-teaching personnel as needed and present the names to the board for ratification at the next meeting. Authorize the purchase of a $20,000 bond for the board president. Authorize the superintendent and treasurer to apply for state and federal projects. Designate the superintendent as a purchasing agent. Establish the records commission and appoint the board president, treasurer, and superintendent to the commission. An employee for legal firm, Pepple & Wagner, as legal counsel for the district. Authorize the treasurer to sign telecommunication agreements as needed to comply with E-rate rules. And the mileage rate reimbursement for IRS is up to 0.665 or 0.655 or 65.5 cents.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept the organizational items?
I'm going to ask that you pull item N again for pricing for Pepple & Wagner.
Now, I'm going to say at this moment, we have our interest-based bargaining training for Tuesday of next week.
Mhm.
And we will have counsel at that meeting as they will have their representation.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Can we do the month-to-month basis again, like we did last year?
Last year, we appointed once we had our pricing, but my suggestion is if we're really considering looking at a firm other than Pepple and Wagner, we put together a subcommittee from the board
Okay.
and start interviewing those firms if we're committed to making those changes.
Okay.
I know last year we had some discussions about, for various particular reasons. We have made a very concerted effort for the fiscal year to really reduce our fees. And I know you have how much we have for that,
Mhm.
for our representation.
Mhm.
So we can pull that item. It's just, I would suggest if we're really that embedded into that, we have a subcommittee and start interviewing those people. I know, Mrs. Host, when you were on the board previously, you guys went through that process as far as
Yeah,
changing firms.
we brought in Pepple and Wagner, and I personally think if that's what we want to do, that's something we should be looking at in like October, not in January when we're trying to hire. I just think that at this point in the game, we need to keep moving, and any discussion or subcommittee about exploring that should be done prior
It should have been
to
done.
January is my opinion.
I agree with Cindy. I think that we're too far into, and we're right now, like I said, Tuesday, we're having a meeting. And I feel that it would not benefit us as a school district or as a board to be changing in the middle of negotiations. And I would not recommend that. I just, if we want to look at that as something next year, then that's something we need to look at least by October, September. I mean, because you're talking, getting everybody, sending out who would want to do that. I disagree with pulling the item. You have any opinion on that, Steve?
I'm with you. We went through this last year. The pricing was out there. They know what our expectations, so I don't have a problem with them.
You can just pull it and I'll vote separate then. That's fine.
You pull for separate vote.
You can hold for separate.
That's fine.
Okay.
Now, I want to go back before we get a motion in a second. Board meeting times. We didn't settle on that. We have them, previously they were 6. I mean, for this last school year, they were 6. So we want
Previously,
to,
before they were 5.
they were 5 before that,
Is
so
there a certain time? I mean, it doesn't matter to me.
I
I'm
left that
supposed to be
time,
retired. I'm not sure.
5:30, I mean, I could probably do 5:30.
5:30.
Yeah, if you want to do 5:30, if you want to switch from 6.
Is that
That's
good
easier
you,
for
Steve,
everybody.
getting here? And then
Seem to
Aaron
get out
probably
here
will work
late,
for
so
him.
we can bump it up a half hour, and it's,
Okay,
So 5:30.
Is that all right?
okay.
Okay, so I'll need to have a motion to pull that item, correct?
We need a motion and second to pull item N.
Is it what here? I need a motion to pull item N.
I'll motion.
give me a second.
A second. Roll call.
Mrs. Wolf,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Miles.
Yes.
Okay, then I need a motion to accept the board organizational items except for N that's pulled.
I make that motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
And I have a motion to accept, to employ the legal firm of Pebble Wagner for the school district year of the 2023.
I make a motion to employ the legal firm of Pepple Wagner for legal counsel for the district for 2023.
A second.
Roll call, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wolf.
No.
Can I have a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second it.
4:46.
4:46.
Almost perfect.
No, we can skip it.
I want to thank everybody for being here for the first regular board meeting of 2023. Roll call.
Mr. Cottrell's absent. Mrs. Grandison? Here. Mrs. Host?
Here.
Mr. Miles?
Here.
Mrs. Wolf? Here.
We're going to skip the Pledge of Allegiance. That's all right with everyone. We'll go into accommodations.
I have a few accommodations. First off, I want to acknowledge Jill Wagner. She was nominated for the Outstanding Middle School Star Polisher Award through Chorus. And as you know, we're members of Chorus with the Coalition of Rural and Appalachian Schools. Mrs. Wagner will be receiving her award in February. So Mr. Watkins and I talked to her yesterday after we got word that she was a award winner, well deserving. So I want to commend and congratulate Jill. In your board packet, there was a list of our 2022 Christmas program donors. We want to thank our people who have donated to businesses and personal families that have helped. And then also I want to commend our cheerleaders. I received an email from Superintendent Peoples at Newcomerstown, and his email states, Brian, please pass our sincere thanks for the outpouring of support shown to Newcomerstown schools during a time of difficulty. Your cheerleading squad helped by collecting and donating stuffed animals as part of our efforts to comfort our students and family. Today, each one of our elementary students received a stuffed animal to take home. Your school support for our community is humbling. This goes to show that while we are often seen as competitors, we all care for one another as people. And with gratitude, Jason C. Peoples. I don't know about you, but I was getting a little choked up whenever I was reading that because of the sentiment our cheerleaders had. And I really commend our cheerleaders. I've already sent them a thank you note acknowledging that. As you may or may not know, there was a family in Newcomerstown around Christmas time that died in a house fire. And this just makes you proud to be a part of Claymont. And my final one is that acknowledging our school board. School board members exemplify local citizen control and decision-making in education. They volunteer hundreds of hours and a measurable amount of energy to ensure that our schools are providing the best education possible for our children in our community. For all their dedication, we are taking this opportunity to show them our appreciation during School Board Recognition Month. School board members are citizens whose decisions affect our children, what they learn, who will teach them, and what kinds of facilities house their classrooms. These men and women elected to establish the policies that provide the framework for our public schools. They represent you and take this responsibility serious at lengthy, sometimes challenging meetings, conferences, and institutes where they broaden their knowledge about education. Our school board is one of the more than 700 school boards across the state. These boards enable us to have local control on public schools, meaning that the decisions on school programming are made by local elected representatives who understand the community's unique problems, values, culture, and circumstances. With the advice of council and the council of educational professionals they hire, our school board has the impact to virtually impact every aspect of our schools. This is a huge responsibility and one that should not be taken lightly. Too often we neglect the recognition and dedication of hard work of these men and women who represent us. We salute our board members who are dedicated in a civic responsibility to make local school and our community possible. We applaud Mr. Cottrell, Mrs. Grandison, Mrs. Host, Mr. Miles, and Mrs. Wolf for their vision and voice to help shape a better tomorrow. Please feel free to stay for an appreciation reception following our meeting and for our board members. But if you would please give me a round of applause for our board members for recognition.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Lois, I have a couple, I just wanted to
Okay.
point
go
out. We
ahead.
were, last month when we were talking, and Beth wrote that grant for a couple $100,000, you know, kind of going above and beyond and for the safety and whatnot for our district. It got me thinking, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Laura Cotton and her team at the high school, the drama department, because they are on an initiative to raise between $220,000 and $250,000 for not just the drama department, because that lighting and the sound system and all that stuff gets used district-wide. But they've kind of taken that initiative on themselves, and it's broken into 4 phases, and they've already got phase 1 and phase 2 paid for, working on phase 3 and have half of it paid for. So I just wanted to publicly give them some recognition for what they're doing as well for our district, because that's just money we don't have to spend out of our budget.
Yeah.
When we have people like Laura and her team taking the initiative to get out there and update it, because I'm guessing, and Beth probably knows best, but it's probably not really been updated since we built it in 2000. Yeah, so for 20 some years later, so I'm real thankful for her and her team that they're doing that. And then the mock trial team competed last weekend down in Cincinnati, and I talked to the mock trial coach, and they didn't win, but Jenna Dotz did really well, and according to him, she should have. She should have won. But so hats off to them. I just want to wish the the mock trial team the best of luck. They'll be heading to New Philly. Hopefully they get out of Philly and head to Akron and maybe even make it to state. So I just wanted to give a couple shout outs.
And I want to also thank the middle school. They did a wonderful job. Matter of fact, of all the schools that donated, Claymont really came through at the food pantry. We received a truckload of food and a large donation of money. So that was very helpful at the food bank. I really appreciate that. And I want to, that's all right. That's all the Okay, public participation.
We did not have anybody who requested to participate, so we can.
Go into administrative reports.
Yes.
Do we have any principals that?
We do have some principals here. Does anybody want to share things beyond their report? I know the tutoring starts at the end of this month, so we're prepping for that. But
This is high school. Jessica, Richard.
middle
Richard, I
school.
need clarification on yours.
Okay.
MOI assessment, reading bike program from Rural Mix, teacher observations and walkthroughs. I just don't know what they are.
Okay.
I mean, the walkthroughs that I got, but I'm like, what's MOI assessments?
Okay, that is middle of the year assessments, okay? So we're starting those to get those through. Romix Insurance was kind enough to come to us. They wanted to do an incentive program for the kids for reading. So they've offered bikes. So we got a boys and girls bike for first grade, a boys and girls bike for second grade. So we are doing an incentive reading program. They even designed the forms for us to use. It's got little cats all over and they get so many minutes. And then we're gonna do a drawing for a free bike.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Everybody else's, thank you.
Okay.
Richard, not so much. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I was gonna feel bad if I totally missed something or didn't thank you for something.
I just have
Beth.
Come to the microphone like you say.
I just see something on the agenda that I think is incorrect. There is a number H on there that I have no idea what that is. And I think that was something maybe left over
That is correct.
that was from last year.
We need to remove that.
So I think that needs removed.
I
Sorry.
wonder,
Okay? That's it.
Good catch.
yeah.
She say 8?
Yeah.
We did that already.
We don't want to do it again.
Or account for it. CA report?
Uh,
That was hard, Shane.
Everybody's.
I
What's
don't
that?
have,
No, OC.
no, see, I don't have a bucket list.
And then Eric, to see.
So we'll go under, move to the board discussions.
So is there anybody else want to? Nobody has anything to offer? Okay. We'll go into board discussion items. Start with Eric.
Yeah. We had a grounds transportation meeting, met, and is really focusing on transportation. So it revolves around our bus driver shortage and with absences. And we're trying to make plans into next year. Ironically, there was a superintendent emails that went around this week regarding pay for substitute bus drivers. We're right there in the amount that everybody else is paying for our substitutes. So if you say, well, if we increase it to blank number, we also have to be reminded that, and I was just watching TV and they talk about food prices, and they said, well, we'll have to raise our prices for the restaurants because, of what we have to pay for food and also with the wage increase for minimum wage. So, but I'm going to turn it over to Eric and kind of explain, but you're going to have to come to the microphone and have some discussion on this.
Well, we don't have drivers. So, we're exploring other options, what can we do to alleviate some of the problems that we're going to run into. So right now, I guess some of the options that are out there, expanding our walk zone is one of those. Double routing is another one of those. With double routing, especially double routing, you're looking at other issues that are going to be created because of the double routing. So at any rate, I'm going to talk to one of our local bus coordinators that does the double routing. But right now, I'm kind of focusing on looking at our expanded walk zone and what that can do for us and how that can help us. So I'm kind of in the middle of that right now.
What exactly does double routing mean?
Means that typically the high school, middle school would start early.
Mhm.
The other schools would start later. And, just kind of guesstimating later, meaning like 9-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood, because you would take, I would have drivers that would have to go out, pick up the older kids, bring them in, drop them, and then go back out and get all the younger kids, bring them in, and then drop them as well.
So with the high school, I'm going to guess most of probably the majority are driving, or, I'm guessing we probably already looked at that. What do you got driving
Well,
wise versus?
Yeah, you've got, I don't know how many, they might know. I don't know how many drive,
I guess that would probably be part of a bigger
Sure.
picture analysis when you get to that,
Yeah.
to that point.
Well, currently, how many buses do you have out at the high school at dismissal time?
We have 7,
And then how many do you have at the middle school?
3.
Okay, so, but all those 7 are basically full coming from the high school then?
Pretty much, yeah.
So
Pretty
each
much.
one, each bus, 2 to a seat, larger kids, would sit about 45 kids on a bus, correct?
That's cramming it, yeah.
Yeah. So if
So how
we're,
many of those are coming to go to the field house versus actually going home?
that I don't have a
Right.
number, but I mean,
we got one bus that drops kids off at the field house this time.
Yeah.
You know, another problem that will arise if we would do the double routing is the drivers aren't going to get back until, you know, well after 4 o'clock, and we won't have anyone to
For sports.
sports.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that's, and again, I'm going to talk to, you know, explore, see what the other ones do. But, you know, just trying to plug one hole and then another one, you know, that kind of stuff.
It's like you're
So,
doing this.
right,
What
right.
other schools do double routes?
Philly does,
Philly?
yeah.
Our problem is that our bus drivers are getting close to retirement age. And unfortunately, we have one that's going to be having surgery soon,
You're driving, right?
Yeah, I'm driving now.
and he's driving, and so we're now down to, even if we pull our full-time sub,
We don't have
We
one.
don't
We
have,
don't have one.
now.
He's on a regular route.
yeah, as I said, he's on a regular route,
Right.
so our full-time sub is now on a regular route, so we no longer have that full-time sub, and Eric's became the
so,
full-time sub.
yeah,
But we're still short, if anybody calls off work or gets sick, then we don't have enough to fill all our routes.
right. We have to have a plan this year, right now, which we do, you know, if 3 people call off. So I got my mechanic that he can,
Oh, yeah.
I can put him on a route. But if there's ever a situation, which is going to be more likely once this person goes on, you know, on leave for 5 or 6 weeks, then I got to kind of move around. I got one person that is willing, that has their CDL, that'll help me out. So I think we're okay, but I guess a worst case scenario, if not, if that person can't do it or won't do it,
Or somebody
then,
calls off, or another person calls off.
right. Then we're looking at a route that's going to start at least an hour late, go home an hour early.
And you haven't had to do that yet
No,
at all?
Let's
No.
hope we don't.
no. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at. I've been very fortunate the last year and a half, you know, I've had people come in that doesn't happen. And last year, you know, and Tracy also stayed and helped. So up, you know, up to a couple weeks ago or before Christmas, I've been pretty fortunate, but now we're getting like everyone else, you know, we took the right step in creating a full-time sub. You know, that was a good thing. It's just now there's no one, there isn't anyone that, you know, really that wants to do it. I mean, it's a big responsibility, so.
When I heard on the radio, I actually thought of you last week because I heard on the radio that they're projecting by the end of this year, 160,000 less CDL drivers across AB CDL drivers in the nation.
Wow.
So statistically, I mean, it's a problem everywhere. We know that, but when you start
Right.
hearing numbers like that, like kind of resonates a little bit more like,
Yeah.
holy smokes,
Yeah.
like, you know, that's a lot of people
And
that
this is
are gonna
the
be
low, and
driving.
this is the lowest paying CDL, I mean.
Oh,
they
yeah.
can-
Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, you know, it's not just us, it's everyone, you know. So, you know, we're trying to be proactive. If what worries me is the 3 out at the one time. And I think we have that covered, I think. But if not, just so you're aware,
Yeah.
there's a route that'll have to be an hour late and go home an hour early. You know, the bus drivers, they've been, you know, I know some of them have been sick and they'll come in and, you know, wearing their mask and wiping everything down, but they know. So they've really done a great job and helped me out a lot too. Just that's kind of where we're at. So right now, what I'm looking at is, okay, with that expanded walk zone, you know, how does that affect us? What can we do? How can I combine? You know, that kind of thing. So that's my first one, you know, and then the double routing, I'll attack after that to see, after we meet. see
The
what.
the expanded walk zone, I mean, Eric's looking at up to 2 miles, which will put a strain, if we move that route, which will put a strain on car pickups at the buildings. But
2 miles uphills both ways.
yeah.
Right.
My grandparents.
So, I mean, it's not ideal, but if it was expanded to 2 miles, there would, essentially that eliminates all in-town busing. So a person on the west side coming clear over to Denison, that's within 2 miles. You know, so the only building that we would look at providing transportation would be out to the high school. But it would be, and we don't have the numbers of how that would fall, but Eric has looked at the radius, kind of number of kids that have fallen within that scope of who's on there. And then you take a look at how many bus drivers do you need from that point. I will say this, I've already met with the OPC under labor management, and we've discussed changing job descriptions, different ideas to help us out to have subs. They're willing, they're listening at the table and say, yeah, we want to help. We have a short-term plan for if we have 3 or 4 people out. But if we have the people who are eligible to retire at the end of the year, we don't have people to take those positions.
And how many is that? How many?
Well, right now we know 3 are eligible.
Is that 3 total?
And, you know, those are the 3 that I know of right now, and there's several that are aging. Say becoming more experienced, I'll say that. When they decide to hang it up and turn their keys in, I don't know. But it, like you said, Mrs. Host, it's an issue everywhere. Even the district that's paying higher than anybody else couldn't fill a route at the beginning of the year because there was no one. So.
And it doesn't seem to be a good solution, because I know I hear from parents, because the kids are getting on early, and some kids are at school at 7 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and classes don't start until, so they're basically sitting there, and then that puts it on the principals, right? Because somebody's got to be there to watch the kiddos that are getting bused by, and dropped off early. So it is, I don't envy you. I really don't.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the fact that you're trying to be proactive and strategic and thinking and looking ahead to what's coming down the pike and how we're going to manage that. So I
Right.
appreciate that.
I mean, there's no doubt we have to do something. And a lot of people aren't going to be happy, no matter what we decide.
That's
But,
normally how it works anyway.
I mean, we know that.
We can't make everybody happy,
Right.
Right.
Can we, as I got off the ramp coming home from work, I don't know how much we can do, or if we even can. Kimball's was offering $2,500 sign-on bonus type thing. Can we do something, not like that, something that, I mean, we're a community, that'd be great. We're a community that always rises up to help in situations. And this is another one that I think we're reaching out to within. If we can get 2, is better than having this guy driving all the time where he needs to be managing, as doing his job. So maybe that's something to entertain.
Or if everybody could talk to some people that have CDLs that aren't, maybe they're semi-retired, or I was talking to somebody today, and he said, well, what if, even if we could get somebody, maybe said, I'll sign on for the morning route, or I'll sign on just for the afternoon route. And that's what I was kind of encouraging this gentleman to do. I said, and offer some incentive that way. Maybe you're considered a full-time employee, but you're only working just the afternoons or just the mornings or something. We're going to have to be creative, because that's the big complaint I was hearing when I'm out there talking about bus driver. Your whole day's gone. You drive in the morning and then you got to come back in the afternoon. And this person said, maybe I'll drive in the afternoon. Who would pick up in the morning? So I'll see if you can go find somebody.
That'd be an issue.
Yeah.
But Eric has mentioned, the process to getting your CDL is not an easy process. It's very lengthy. And there is at least, a 3-month wait to get into Lock 17 to take your test?
As of a couple of months ago, guys from Buckeye yet. I mean, now one of them got in early because somebody canceled, but it's a long wait to get in down at Port to test.
Is that the only local place?
Local, yeah. Yeah,
There aren't a whole lot of them
no,
in the state.
no.
Because I mean, I know people from Perry County and others that have come up here to test. Yeah.
Yeah, you see all kinds of different school buses going up and down
Yeah.
36.
I mean, when I worked along the river, we tested up in Fort
Yeah.
because there wasn't any place local.
Yeah.
You know, now I haven't checked, you know, within the last few weeks if that's changed, but I'm just kind of assuming that it hasn't, but
Any other, we're going to go back to meeting again. I think next board meeting, we'll have some of the ideas of what would happen if we went to 2 miles. And then we'd have to then make a decision whether we weren't, and would it need to be then looking, I would look at informing parents for next year. And by the way, if you're interested in getting a CDL to drive bus, please contact Mr. Henry. Because I know when that letter goes out, everybody will complain and they'll be part of the problem, but not part of the solution. But it'll be a rough decision that we have to make. So just for future meetings here, we'll have that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next on our agenda is under discussions is the intermediate brick work. So I don't know, Beth, if you want to take the microphone too, but when the intermediate building, they moved over from Trenton Avenue building to fix where the water was leaking into the building. They moved to the intermediate building. They did some investigations, and there's a massive repairs that need to be made. I-beams over every window across the front of the building need to be replaced. If you look there and look up, you'll see that the building is tilting in toward the top. A good thing we've already approved replacing the roof, because what that is because the roof is actually that the asphalt
Yeah,
kind
rubber
of
membrane.
contracts and it pulls. So that roof needs to be, we approved a whole roof replacement for $400 and some thousand. This brickwork, which could be used under ESSER, because Kim has contacted and made sure that it was ESSER available, is in the essence of over $300,000 to fix this.
340,000.
340. I don't see any other way around
You said we could
This-
use that? Yes.
That's just the brick and the
That's-
beams.
That's the brickwork. That is the beams, brickwork, making sure everything's structurally sound.
Yeah, it's taking everything down, putting the beams in, rebuilding the walls.
So Beth, if you can, I guess, paint everybody a picture what this is gonna look like from start to finish.
Yeah,
As
I
that crane
know,
rolls up.
we discussed at the building and grounds meeting, kind of in detail what this would happen, and we really, it's pull the roof back across the front. They would pull that back, shore up the building, so it's in those areas, take the walls down to the top 3rd floor window, bring the cranes in, set the beam, rebuild that back up, then re-secure the roof. So that process, entire process is, they felt they could do that in 60 days, 60 work days. So we worked on not the entire project, 90 days. The area where we felt that they could be back in school with some of the other work. So the messy opening up, doing all that is 60 days. What I just described.
60 work days,
60 work days.
so 12 weeks.
The additional work to finish would be people on scaffolding, putting brick in, mortar, the building would be, the envelope would be sealed. And then it would be doing all the more finish work for another 30 days to finish.
Work days.
And we can do that while school's in session.
That's,
Because we
yes.
At the meeting, we were discussing whether if we're going to have to tweak the school year.
Yeah, I think I've worked a little bit with, we've talked back and forth with Jess, and I know I said, don't do anything yet because we still need to discuss with the board and see if, the approval going forward. We talked about starting in May, because I'd rather, my recommendation was start early, because if we do run into something, we've got time to maybe recover. The vendor has scheduled 4 10s and an 8, so it's a 5-day work week, but it's 48 hours in their projections. I worked with them. I don't know if the timeline, did it make it in their packet or
No,
like
I
my
never
rough
got an
time?
update
Okay.
on it.
So I did do a timeline with them. And they looked over that and felt that was doable. It was to start May, I don't have it in front of me, 8th. May 8th was one of the scenarios.
What do you got
And-
with the kids?
Well, part of that is what we had talked to them is there would be no deconstruction done while any students, staff were in the building. So a lot of that work is just more site work. It affects sidewalks,
Okay.
road closure, it affects recess. But a lot of just building the stuff to be able to start as soon as the kids are out of the building. That's what we
And when's the
discussed.
kids, when's the teacher's last day?
Teachers, the Tuesday after
After
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day.
Kids' last day is Friday prior to,
Yes.
so they would be working on that. But as far as the prep work,
We've talked with, I have not talked with Dennison, Village of Dennison
I
yet,
did.
because I think that was part of, we wanted to make sure this was, this would be a go. But we have talked with, there's Eric, we discussed maybe closing. I would like to keep the road closed, 24 hours a day, just because I wouldn't want somebody coming through on a construction site, letting them leave their equipment there. But being able to use one side of the road for busing, because this is a busing hub. So it would be this side of the road and the sidewalk and maybe some into some of that side of the road would have debris on it. If you look at that building, it's a wall around it. They have to dig into the hill to get their equipment in there to sit on a level surface to be able to work. So this is a major project, and
Now, that's my question. So
Go ahead.
in the 12 weeks, that's, the setup
60
is
days.
included in the 12 weeks?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, I started it,
So I was thinking maybe the
May 8th.
prepping, that's considered part of our 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they should be done before school starts.
That's,
In theory.
it came out to be like August 18th on my chart, I think. So
School starts.
starting May 8th. I mean,
it's a tight timeline.
it's a tight timeline, I'm concerned,
I mean,
I think
but-
that,
As Beth mentioned, once school starts, the building is shored up, it's stable, and they may have some outside work that needs to be still
Yeah.
done, but it won't interfere. Whenever they were here a month
they
ago,
started that process
Yeah.
before we found all this other.
Yeah.
And, the stairs, have still be able to drop kids off, pick them up. To complicate things, this was just something that happened this past week. Sent me a lovely picture of our steps are falling apart. The center stairs are in very bad shape. TC, Cottrell, said, Beth, why don't we look into, if we have to dig into the side of the hill on the left side and the right side, why don't we look at tearing the stairs out? So, we're tearing up. And so they are coming back again tomorrow. I've had people here a couple times looking at different options and look at what that price is. I would probably say, some would go off the first price they gave me, but would be added to the second project. I've talked to them about this would need to be a different group. I can't expand the timeline any longer than you have. So we would need, more people thrown at that. But in the building and grounds meeting, I know we talked before because we're like, how do we get the money to replace those stairs all the way down? It's a huge, the concrete, it's a major expense and I don't have that back yet. The plan, I think I had it in my report, is by 2/2, all of the, that's the finance committee meeting. We have, that's why I've kind of been lining up all these major projects. All of those costs should be back. The prices for the entrances are due back on that day. We'll have a bid opening earlier that day. This project with the addition of the steps coming back, we already know the original on this. What else did we have? Oh, and then the chiller projects, we put those out to bid. I just really wanted all that to come back in at the same time. And
that's on the 2nd?
which one?
Everything's gonna be back
No,
on
no,
the
I
2nd?
mean, the last part is the bids for the building
That's what I'm
project.
saying, you're gonna have everything back on February 2nd.
Before February 2nd, yes. The last piece comes in February 2nd at noon. Yep. The other ones were January 13th. We've got some of these. So, I mean, we'll have at least all of the totals because I think that, we'll know how much extra money do
Are
we
we
have
talking
left.
about this at our meeting? Can Lois and I get copies of all that stuff ahead of, like, I don't wanna come into a meeting and have to try to digest all that. Like, I'd rather have everything
have-
ahead of
yeah,
time
I
so I
think
can
the-
read through it.
Except those ones that,
Except
the ones
that day,
except
yeah.
that last
And
one.
those will be numbers that, we can have our estimates put in there.
Yeah.
We'll have those estimates, but then it'll just be how much off are they on
Yeah.
that with the bids come back.
Okay,
But
I would just,
yes, I think we can do that.
I
The other
would
ones
pack it to look
are,
at.
the other ones will be much sooner than that.
Yeah.
January 13th are the chillers. And so
which is fine, if at the
I
end
think
of
we just
January.
need to look at, where we are on things to
Right.
make
to look at moving that.
decisions.
Oh,
Yeah, because Jason, yeah.
So
Okay.
to keep the timeline of all of these, the February meeting would be where we would need to make decisions at that next board meeting. So that's where I'm just kind of lining things up. So you have the financial meeting, look at, I mean, my feeling is I'm feeling there's gonna need to be cuts on some of these lists. It's just prioritizing them and figuring out what's in and what's out. So, I'm sorry, I don't have as good a news
I'm
to
going
share.
to interject on that though. If they're able to come up through the steps,
Yes,
then conversation has been had about eliminating the first and second set of steps.
yes.
And then they'll exit down the sides. They'll go around to the back parking lot and around to the side street. The first set of steps honestly needs to be torn out and
They're bad.
replaced as they are now. As the steps crumbled the other day, and they're in bad shape, and it's the whole way down.
Yeah.
I know that there was some skimming of some concrete. How many years ago, Beth, was that done?
I want to say it's been about 10 years.
10 years ago.
That was done.
There was a Band-Aid on the issue.
Yes,
The footers on the side are fine.
yes.
They're very solid, but it's the steps themselves. So we'll look at some estimates, but I know we're kind of estimating close to $100,000 to do all the steps back.
Yeah. And I
So-
mean, we kind of feel that, would that look with just, putting grass then all the way across, there'd be the extending that railing all the way across, and you have one set of steps, come down, then you go over, and then you go down Welch Street side that would be up there. So it would eliminate one set of, for those parents that have to walk up 3 flights of steps to get to the front door, it would put it down to 2. So that I think,
I will say that sometimes it's easier to walk up the hill versus walking up the steps.
I walk around and go in the side of the elevator if at all possible. But, so is there any other questions that you have about that? I know it's a lot, and I'm, trying to.
Depending on the decision we go, and when we go with the fixing the wall, we'll have what we consider emergency resolution because
Yes.
of, we have the one person who had bid on that originally, and to say because of the emergency and the need of this is why we only have one bid. So
Right,
that
we
will
had
cover us.
we had 2 bids when we selected them the first time,
Okay,
and they were the low bid, but with this.
Yeah.
The timing of going back out to have it replaced, and
and
I'm
rebid
just,
is just not gonna.
yes,
it's not
and
good.
I think BOE
And there
can do an
will be
emergency
their
resolution.
Timelines and everything, so you have to go through.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So any unforeseen issues that I hope we have not, we don't know what those could be.
I mean, I've been in conversation a good bit, Scott is his name. He's been here numerous times. You know, that's why I said, he's been, you know, in the classrooms, on the roof. They've opened that up. I mean, they had that all open, saw that and then put it all back together. He felt like he did not see any unforeseen issues on the front. But he said, you've got the same problem on the side of your building as well at the top. And I said, well, we don't have any money to fix that right now. But I mean, I think that is something that down the road is possibly going to need to be looked at. And that accessibility of that is a lot harder than what we're dealing with in the front. I don't know right now how we would get equipment in there to do that kind of work without doing, I don't know.
That's what heavy equipment operators.
It would be probably leaving a crane down on a road and doing it from a road or something on the sides. But he said you do have that, you know, we didn't tear into that, but there is that issue on the Sherman Street side of the building as well.
I did, Beth, I ran into the mayor,
Mhm.
Greg, and he said, I didn't go into details because there aren't a lot of details. I said, but we are going to need a lot of construction. And he said that he could close off, you know, anything.
Street that we're doing.
Available for Beth on whatever.
Okay. Yeah, we did check. I was a little concerned about the historical marker that's on the building. So we were checking into that. And we did work with Dennison of making sure there is no ordinance that we have to meet. They didn't pass an ordinance. So that's at least one thing, but it would look different when we're done. So
I just remember we took those peaks off and man, it was.
I know,
crazy.
you know, it would look different. I like to
Peaks.
think it's gonna look, I mean, if you go back and look at an old postcard, there was never steps in the middle. It was a rolling grass hill. So we would be putting it back to look more like
I was going to bring a picture of
in
that.
in the past. So
I'm all for it. I'm just
that's
saying.
all I have.
You gotta remember, the important thing is the building still exists.
It does.
Yeah,
it
it's
does.
just it's a big expense to keep it.
It's just sad. I said this in the grounds meeting. It's just sad to putting so much money into an old building. It's kind of like the old car, you put brakes on it and then something else goes wrong. And that's the only sad part for me. I don't like constantly putting, and that's what it feels like we're going
Yeah,
to this old
big, it's
building.
some large chunks of money. So
And it's large chunks.
large chunks of money.
And
Yes.
like you said, we're going to be replacing more beams and
Okay.
I voiced that before and continue to voice it.
Okay.
It's an old building.
Okay.
Ron, I don't think anybody disagrees with you. I think what it comes down to is the financial restraints on the district. At this point, we don't have another option unless you want to put a levy on, you know? And in this economic time, I think we would be hard pressed to get that passed. In fact, I don't think it would. People are strained, Mr.
Right.
Wrench said, on food and
Groceries. Yeah.
groceries and gas and, you know, so I totally agree.
I just want to.
It's disheartening.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's disheartening.
And I think we're going to find we're going to be more financially hit with more expense with the building.
Well, it'll be very similar to what the stadium was at that time before we did that project. Because we were soaking at that time $60,000 to $100,000 reworking the brick. Still was not fixing the water that was dribbling down into the locker rooms. I mean, it was a historical, I remember when I was there, but I also talked to a lot of people that played there in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and they said it was bad then. So that's where strategic planning is going to be important,
right.
because our community may come back and say, you need to do something with your aging buildings. And we have to put a plan together to try to meet that within a 5, 10, 15-year point. So, and then I'll keep you up on the podium.
Oh, okay.
But the high school concrete, if there is a item on your agenda for the high school concrete, if you go into on the student parking lot side, that concrete is in very bad shape. We have estimates from the lowest bidding company that's on your agenda. We are going to be tearing that apart, replacing that, and Beth has applied for a Reeves grant to buy, for them to buy outdoor picnic tables for outside classrooms. So if sometimes now you go out there and when the weather's nice, they might be underneath a tree or in the yard or wherever. But this will provide an outside classroom space for them, and also will open up their cafeteria times that they can be outside during cafeteria. I know the kids really love the cookouts that Mr. Wakefield and Mr. Buxton cook, those hamburgers and hot dogs. But having those picnic tables outside, because they all, at this time, they all go back in. But
I
if you
think
not,
we received 5 bids on the concrete. So this was,
the least expensive,
yes, that was the lowest cost.
and this will come out of capital expenses.
Yes, that is not an ESSER expense.
Do you have any questions for Beth on that item?
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
And then just moving into the next item is for addendums and corrections. The motion and second for those items would be, we have the treasurer item for Ray and Associates. That'll be item D, for them to, for a Medicaid school program for 2022, 23, and 24. Also under superintendent items, adding Patty Snyder as a tutor for after-school tutoring. Accepting the resignation of Lisa Summers as a non-athletic supplemental as musical stage manager, and then to approve Laura Cotton for the same supplemental for the remainder of the school year, and then remove item H.
I have a motion to accept.
I make a motion, we accept the addendums, additions, and corrections.
A second?
Roll call?
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
I don't know how many items.
No, I think I have the items that need to
How many items we put?
I just have a quick question though. On item G, where it says approve the technology, computer network, and internet responsibility use policy as presented. Did we meet for that one? The policy committee?
No,
Was that just,
that was just, no, we didn't. That was just an updated policy that we received from our own Marisa, I believe. Isn't that correct? From you. Yeah.
was there any changes made to it from the previous one? There were?
What did you change?
I think the biggest changes were, there was some fee structure towards the end of, with different damages to Chromebooks. There was some changes there. And probably, I think the bigger change, and this is where we worked with the principals on, were some of the discipline of if there were some infractions, you know, it might be a warning the first time, and then there were some very, it's spelled out in there, what if it was a second offense or third offense, what would be done. Before, when we had kind of student behavior that was related to technology or technology misuse with the Chromebooks, I mean, we couldn't like take it away from them because they still needed it to do schoolwork. So we were able to this year kind of, Kelsey, I'm like looking for the word here, It's, you got, kind of get put in the restricted mode. You get in the restricted area. So we have a process now where if there is something that a student has done wrong, you still have your book and you're in the restricted mode. So it's very limited on what you can get to. You can still do your schoolwork, but it's very limited. So that was spelled out. That was a change that was spelled out there. Those are probably the two biggest changes. And I did that early this year because they go in the student handbook and we're trying to get those done earlier because of the online forms and stuff that we're rolling into. We're going to be doing.
So would this policy take effect for next school year?
It's next, yes, it is
Okay.
next school year. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Actually, so I think we're good. Just one more quick question. Beth, you might be able to answer this. When you're amending the contract with the boiler service agreement at the cost of 12, what was the previous cost?
14.4.
So you just- okay.
It was in my update. We are
It was in there.
saving $1,928 a year.
Okay.
So that much less.
Okay, thank you.
That's year 3 of 3 year. And we just renegotiated.
That's year 3 of a 3-year. Okay,
Yes, so I did 1 year.
thank you.
Okay. I get confused on this.
I think it's that. I think so. Yeah.
You putting it in slide mode?
Top left corner.
Go ahead to the first slide. So general fund revenues for fiscal year 2023, we're slightly below budgeted. We're at 47.47%, projection at 50%, 6 months into the fiscal year. Historically, that's how it's been because we get most of our property taxes revenues in the second half of our fiscal year, which is basically the first half of the calendar year. So we're hoping to see that. I'll start getting advances in February, and we'll start seeing our property taxes come in. For expenditures, we're running a little bit lower too than 50%. We're at 48.65%. To the year, 86.6% is related to salaries and benefits, and our supplies and materials are still running a little bit high at 55%. Fiscal year to date revenues were about $10.4 million with expenses at $10.7 million. We had a deficit spend in December of $782,000, which puts us at the fiscal year at a deficit of $313,000
Is that expected?
for
Because of
December.
prepaid?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's just historically, the one report I think I give you, it kind of gives you last year's too. So it's comparable to last year's. Actually, it's a little bit less than what last year's was, but true days cash, we're sitting at 113. ESSER expenditures, ESSER 2, we had 29,550, which was paid towards the software controls for the HVAC. Still have outstanding purchase orders of 217,000, and you can see what that's for. And all of our ESSER 2 money has been encumbered. ESSER 3 expenditures, we had 62,685 for December, with outstanding purchase orders of 526,000. And we have 2.5 million in our ESSER, but after hearing these conversations, you know that's going to be gone before we know it. For the month of December, I gave you what we were looking at for reimbursements through the state and federal grants of almost $247,000. And our fund balances, so overall cash, we're sitting at almost $7.7 million still in the reserves. Any questions over that before I go into? If not, then if I could have a a first and a second motion to approve the financial report for December, the payment of bills as were presented, the minutes for the regular board meeting of December 12th, and the agreement with Ray and Associates to audit our Medicaid school program.
I make a motion to accept approve the treasurer's items.
I'll second it. Sorry.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
and Mr. Miles.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so the items I have from recommendation are, item A, as every year between August and December, we have to submit a revised code 3313-666, our district bullying harassment report. And then we'll do the same from January to the end of May at our last meeting. But our total for district, as you can see, we had 2 reported bullying incidences, and we had 3 harassment intimidation incidents for that period of time. The school nurses that we would be receiving and working with Altman, they will be working with our 2 school nurses, Miss Courtney and Miss Allie. We have Hannah Hormsby and Jaden Singleton. We have some tutors and some site managers for after-school tutoring, which will begin on January 30th. That'll be paid through the assessor funds. Item D is a 1-year limited contract with a 90 days probationary period for Carol Bates as a 2-hour cook at the high school, and that is effective January 4th. 1-year limited contract with a 90-day probationary period for James Kadich for a bus driver of Route 110, and he began that also January 4th. Approve the overnight wrestling trip. This is retroactive for the wrestling team to go to Wheeling Park December 28th, and that was due to a cancellation of another prior approved overnight trip. So this was they found a time to make up another match. You have the technology network and internet responsible use. Item I, amend the boiler contract with Gardner through December 31st, 2023, and that cost is $12,240. Approve New Philly concrete to replace the concrete at the high school, not to exceed $42,150, and that'll be through capital outlay. The enhancement request for SCView Strategic Solutions, that'll be for student registration modules and also employee onboarding. By moving to this system, using currently what we're having currently, it's still a savings for our school system to move to this strategic solutions for our program. And part of our issues was that we cannot, with our current program, enroll students in this school year and in next. So that's one of the big issues that we're having with our current program. We had the math vision meeting that was held on December 12th, and that's paid $50 per hour. And that was paid through an instructional partners. And those are as listed that attended. And approved the membership with OSBA for 2023, and that cost is $6,581. Approved the following substitute, Victoria Myers, for cook, custodian, and secretary. And I will say, when she came in, I talked to her about driving bus. She did not say I was not interested. And item O, Lisa Summers, her resignation, and Laura Cotton to appoint her for the non-athletic supplemental stage manager.
Motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation.
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Host?
Wait,
Oh,
can we have, I just have a couple questions,
Okay.
discussion
Mhm.
part of it. And I should have asked Beth when she was up there, when are they putting the concrete in at the high school? When's that scheduled?
The day after Memorial Day.
Also, the last work day for the teachers then.
Yes, so we have a window. I felt like that window, that's one of the things that I said the vendor had to be able to block us off at that time, giving them a couple of weeks
window,
Mhm.
and working with Justin Jones. That's like the least amount of stuff going on in the gym.
Yeah.
So that entrance will be closed, get that done, and then, we'll be back in business.
And then the strategic solution, the SC strategic solutions, what did we have before? What was the name of the software?
One view?
One, two.
Yes.
We do use SC Strategic Solutions for our requisition software.
Okay.
So we're familiar with that program also as a staff. I have a former baseball coach back in the corner who's giving me signs. Item D, he said that Carol Bates is not at the high school, she's at the intermediate building, and she has 2.5 hours.
That's cool.
She's not at the high school, she's at the intermediate, and she's at 2.5 hours. So every coach, every parent who pitches the baseball to their kid in the backyard is a coach for baseball.
Just ask them, they'll tell you. It's like football. They're all football coaches too. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Roll call. Oh, no, do you do the motion again? No.
I made the
Roll call.
motion.
So Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Miles,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
I'll open it up to new business. Do we have any new business? And we're not going to go into executive session.
So we're just looking to adjourn.
So I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. And it is
5:48.
5:48.